Welcome to the Stacey Salyer Show, the podcast for property management leaders ready to think bigger about growth. I'm Stacey Salyer and the only acquisition strategist in this industry who sat on all sides of the M&A table. I've been the buyer, acquiring a 370-door competitor during COVID using seller financing. I've been the seller, building and exiting a 7-figure business. And I've been the corporate evaluator as director of acquisitions, assessing over hundreds of companies nationally. That means I know exactly what you're thinking, what you're missing, and what actually works when it comes to buying and integrating in this space. On this show, we dig into acquisitions as a real business tool, not luck, not someday. You'll learn positioning, strategy, numbers, and integration from someone who's actually done it all. Let's go. All right. Well, welcome back, my friends, to the Stacey Salyer Show, where we talk about buying and selling property management companies. While boomers retire, you acquire. So today I have a special guest on my show. We actually became friends back in 2024 when we both attended Amy Porterfield's DCA class, which is Digital Course Academy. And this person that's joining me today does something really cool and very different in the industry. So she focuses a lot on the real estate sales industry. However, I wanted to bring her on because I think it's very relevant to property management as well. And it's not something we really ever talk about in property management. So I really wanted to take this time to introduce kind of a new thought process. And I promise it will tie into acquisitions, both on the buying and selling side, because we're going to talk about some stats and numbers. But without further ado, I want to introduce my friend, Amy Reddick.
Hi, Stacey, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you came on. So Amy is a in-person stager. You own a staging company, staging business, but you're also the owner of the strategic listing prep system. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, and I'm going to preface this episode with basically the rental market, right? So those of us that have been in the industry for a long time, we understand that things cycle up and down. And during like our COVID time, things were just kind of flying off the shelf. But now we're seeing a lot of longer days on market for rentals. We're seeing a lot of accidental landlords re-enter the market. Again, that's a cycle. And I really thought that this particular subject would be really relevant to the accidental landlords. So again, to kind of preface for people who are listening, typically, property management company, when you're listing a tenant occupied home for rent, you're either waiting till the tenant moves out, or you might be listing with just kind of like some original photos, and that's fine. But really, I wanted to kind of touch on what happens when the accidental landlord contacts you. They're a different type of landlord, right? They're usually a little bit higher stress. They have a mortgage that they need to cover. They had not planned on renting out their home. And a lot of times they want to list their home for rent before they're actually out of the home. And that's where Amy comes in, because she's going to teach us today on how you can work with those accidental landlords when you're setting them up, you're meeting them for the first time. And she's going to walk us through a little bit on how you can have the conversation of, hey, you have stuff in your house. Maybe it doesn't look so great the way it is. And I know Amy's going to talk a bit more about that. How do you have a conversation, and how could you guide them to maybe move some of their things around and maybe make it look a little bit more magical, and then ease their fears around that, and then get their house rented faster? So that's the whole game, right? Okay. So Amy, take it away. Tell us how to do that.
Wow. Okay. That's a big, big question.
I know. I mean, we only have 30 minutes, but maybe parent.
Well, I mean, I will start by saying that like in any market, but especially where we're talking about renting and the quick turnover, they don't have time to prepare, these things that you were saying, you really need to work with the sellers from the point at which they're coming in, which, like you said, is going to be that high stress and a really, really short time period in most cases as well. So on the other hand, though, you have to think, of course, about the buyers coming in. And everything needs to be about the buyers. And so how they set up their house needs to be what buyers want, and they're going to pay more for that. They're going to pay more for like certain features or cleanliness and things set up to really highlight some key features of the house. They're not going to pay as much or be as interested or drawn into a house that looks very lived in. And so we try to take a house, prioritize those main things that need to be done, especially when you only have a short amount of time, and really put the money and the effort into certain things. And part of that too is getting the sellers on the same page as you, so that they put the emphasis on those same things as well, and that they actually do those things that you're recommending. Yeah. So there's so much to it. Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Right. There is a lot to it. And I think too, just for anyone listening to, so when we're talking about seller, we're talking about like landlord or investor, and then buyer would be tenant. So kind of going back to that accidental landlord, they're usually on a tighter time frame. Maybe they've been relocated and they don't want to sell their house. It's a 3% interest rate. So they need to kind of stage it, making it look good. And then the tenant coming in, the tenant isn't necessarily going to pay a higher rental rate. We don't, in the tenant world, you don't have the bidding wars back and forth. But days on market right now are trending really high. And I think that's where a lot of us have to do kind of an about face in our marketing and thinking outside the box of, okay, so I have this. Obviously, some of us know professional photos, of course, that's a no-brainer, or some AI edited photos, but why not really take a look at, again, if you're listing that accidental landlord home that they're still living in, like maybe walk us through one main room of like how you would kind of start that conversation of like, hey, I'm so glad that you're going to use our services for property management. Let's really put our best foot forward. And we're not just talking about photos, but whether it's a living room, kitchen, primary room, you tell us which one that we should start with. And what kind of conversation should we have? Because it kind of be a sensitive topic, right? Hey, we need to move grandma's doily off the fireplace mantle, and maybe there's sentimental thoughts about that. So tell us how to start that conversation.
So when I first start working with sellers, I have the luxury of, or your landlords, I guess you would say in your case, but I'm able to send them some things ahead of time where it helps them know what to expect and what the process will be like. And so if you do have that time, it really does help to send just a few slides, even like, hey, we're going to come in and this is the goal, is to make it ready for the tenant, the various tenants who are looking at the house. And so we want to have it present in a way that they're going to be attracted to it. And so there's certain things we're going to look for, that kind of thing. And so it gets them prepared mentally and gets their mindset in the right frame of mind to realize that their house is no longer their home. Their house is now a product that is going to be making them money and needs to be making them money. And so, like you said, days on market, I mean, if that place sits for a long time, they're out that money that they need in order to make that mortgage payment.
Yes.
Or maybe
I was just going to say, can I get like an amen to what you just said? Because that is a challenging one. And that's kind of really why I wanted to bring you on too, because of the, accidental landlord market. That is a really tough thing, a tough shift for people to be like, well, this was my home. And so being able to shift that. So I love that you're pre-prepping them by sending them some good information. And I believe in the show notes, you're going to have a link to a handout where people can learn a bit more. And you also run some cool programs. But anyway, okay.
Yes, I can put a guide in there that helps when you're actually speaking with the landlords and explaining how your pricing can be set depending on how the house looks and how it presents to the market. So in those initial slides that I send them, and then I will add that I also go over this again with them when I meet with them. So even if you can't send it ahead, you can talk about or show them this type of process as you're meeting with them before you get started. And so the other thing I really talk about a lot is what we already spoke a little bit about, but what buyers want, or I should say what tenants want. And I know a lot of times tenants, they need something quick also. And so if you look at those photos and what's going to draw them in, something that looks very lived in, maybe looks dirty, looks dark, looks uninspiring, it's not going to attract the tenants that you want to attract. The tenants that you want to attract are going to want something more like a buyer would want, like spacious rooms. They want light. They want to feel like it's very clean. And so there's some key things that they're looking for that the seller or landlord needs to really keep in mind, because it's really all about the buyers or the tenants. So you really need to set it up just for the tenants and what they want. So we do some mindset shifting so that they can kind of understand that first. And I have found that one thing that really helps is I show them some photos of some houses that are like the lived-in look. Mm-hmm. And then also an after photo, which is like a ready to sell look. And I have some books that I have put together of just of my work. But, once you've done this a couple times, you'll have some photos you could take and use those to show. But that's a huge game changer, I have found, for the owners to actually see the difference it makes in another house. And they can actually look at that photo that's lived in and say, oh, yeah, that looks, ew, I don't want to live there. And then they see, oh, Jim, that looks like our living room. I told you we should have done something. Like they kind of start getting on each other about it. Or they'll say, oh, yeah, that looks like our dining room before we painted it, or something like, oh, yeah, that's not good. And so they kind of start seeing it through a different lens. And I have found that the photos really help. And then on the flip side, they can see what it looks like when it's ready to sell, and that they're much more attracted to it. So that makes a difference too. And so some sellers or landlords would need a little more hand-holding through that whole process. We try to make it light if we can, and add a little humor. That helps sometimes too. Oftentimes one person out of the couple will be a little more like want to hold on a little tighter, and the other is like, oh, come on, we got to get this thing rented. And so they kind of can play off each other, and you can kind of use that because it is a very emotional time for some of them. So it does help to have some humor and some hand holding along the way.
Okay. So you start with mindset. You personally start by sending like an introductory email, like, hey, this is what to expect when I come to your home. And then you walk in, you reiterate kind of that mindset shift, and then use photos, the before and after. And I think that really helps. A lot of people are very visual, and I think makes it super obvious, especially because you're not necessarily calling out their personal home, but they can usually see their identity in the photos.
Right. Yeah, right? Exactly.
I mean, we all are like that. I mean, there's no way I could list my house for sale today. I mean,
right. And I tell them that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell them that. I'm like, if I had to sell my house, and I did sell my house a year ago, I had to change all kinds of stuff around because it's not how I live in the house. It's how buyers are going to perceive it. So yeah, it's a totally different way of them looking at their house than what they're used to.
Right. Yeah. And I like what you said too, making the house or like the rental listing all about the tenant. So it's making them like the hero of the story, I'm assuming, kind of like if you're going to use that language. Or because the resident, the tenant, they should be like when they're looking at photos or when they go walk through a rental listing, they should feel like they could live there, right? And so that's kind of where you're helping them get. And again, these would be for occupied homes. So this would be like accidental landlord needs to move and list it out. So is there any other like conversation that you would recommend? I mean, so beyond the photos and original mindset, are you using any sort of like specific language when you're walking through? Are you walking through like in a living room saying, hey, you could move this, move that?
Well, yeah, I ease into that. Yeah, we ease into that. But yeah, we'll talk about some other things too. You mentioned a little bit about this, but just how the design needs to be set up for the tenants, not you. So you have to remove that personal aspect. And so
Mm.
one of the first things that they can kind of grasp this easier as well, but one of those first things is any personal items that they have out. So personal photos, family photos, names of children on the walls, those kind of things. So I say like right away, that's going to remind the tenants that they're in someone else's house. We want to make it where they can feel like they could live there. And so we want to neutralize those personal type things. And so we talk about that in general also before we even start walking around the house. And the other thing is also just some very personalized design choices, such as like maybe red walls in the dining room or something like that, like that most people aren't probably going to do. But there are some people that have, and I'm sure you all have seen this, but there are some people that have very bright, bold colors in every room in their accessories or their paint. And those just are things that are very personal style. And so those are the things that we want to try to minimize as much as possible,
What's
especially in
the
the main rooms.
right?
Um,
What's the craziest one you've ever seen?
oh,
Or
gosh. So there was a house that had a purple dining room, and well, and another one I'm thinking of too that had a lavender dining room, and with wallpaper border. She did not want to change it because she injured her knees and she'll try to get her son over, that kind of thing. But really emphasized that painting it would make a huge difference. And we're kind of getting into the paint part, but and that's something that usually I bring up towards the end. But paint makes a huge difference. And yeah, and so the purple, I don't know what I've had two purple dining rooms.
Yeah. Well,
Recently,
I
but
was laughing because that's actually the craziest one I've seen too. This was in the somewhere in the 2007, 6. I don't even know
yeah,
what
yeah,
year, but yeah, it was purple,
right.
but it was like sponge painted. Was that
Oh yeah,
trend at
yep,
some point?
yeah.
Like, yeah, it was like a dark purple living room with a lighter, I think it was like a lilac, lavender sponge.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, they didn't want to change it. I was like, that's,
oh, so bad. Right, so bad.
yeah, it was,
Yeah, some sponge painting. There was a house I did, a multi-million dollar house. I did an occupied consult there, and their whole one floor was done with sponge painting. And she's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, you really, especially at that price point, you really need to paint it. At least put brighter lights in first. So she did do that, and then she did paint it too. But and for my purple dining rooms, one lady did paint it and the other was not able to. So we just had to go with it. Now that one, I tried to minimize the purple. So they had purple and white shears on the windows as well. So I took the purple ones down and just left the white and made sure that there were no accessories in there that were going to pull in that color as well. So you just have to kind of work with it. And that's the other thing I tell them too is that, look, if there's anything that I recommend or suggest as we go that you can't do for some reason, like that lady in her knee, or you just don't feel comfortable moving that recliner out because your back hurts and you have to sit in that, or those kind of things, mention it, tell me, and then we'll try to come up with another solution.
mm,
And so sometimes they end up maybe resisting at first, and then as they talk about it or their husband mentions something, they're like, well, I guess I could use that other chair instead. Yeah, we could do that. Once they understand why, I found that sometimes they'll change their minds and stop the resisting as much as maybe initially they were. So I really think explaining the why to them helps as we go through the process also.
okay,
But
yeah,
so we'll do all those things as we start and then start room to room.
okay, okay.
Hmm.
We're building
Yeah.
that relationship and that trust, and then I'm assuming you kind of walk through the entire house and you're kind of taking inventory of what you might be able to move around if needed. Or, and again, from what I understand with occupied conversations, it's like you give a checklist or a list to the investor client, and then they would do the moving around, and then photos
Right.
would become like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're not talking about you, the agent, doing all this, schlepping furniture around staircases. And we're not, this is, this is on the seller to do, or their family, or, you're just the one, or I'm just the one bringing it all together for them and making an actionable plan that they can work off of that will just, again, just get their house seen by as many tenants as possible and get that turnover as quickly as possible. So with that being the goal, a lot of sellers, once they kind of see, oh, that's why, and oh, I need to think of it this way, then they start to get it. This is going to help me make more money. This is going to help me rent my house faster. And that's what we need. So a lot of them at that point, especially when they're under a time crunch, they're just like, let's just get it done. Just tell me what to do and let's get it done. And because a lot of times they're already focused on the next place that they're moving. So they're trying to find a place to move, or they have to find a house in another city or whatever that might be. So a lot of times they might already be focusing on those things as well. But this just gives them that plan that they can take and then use after I leave. Right?
okay.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I have the homeowner write all the notes as we go. So, and I do have forms that I give them that they really like to use that because it categorizes everything for them. But I have them take the notes. It means a lot more to them if they take the notes versus me take the notes or type them up later or something like that and get them to them. They're not going to look at that. So as we go, I'm just talking about it and I'm telling them what I would recommend, and then they're recording it and I'm explaining why as we go. And so then we're just having conversation and dialogue about it. So, and a lot of them really, they start getting it by the end. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah. And you're going to want me to pack this stuff up, right? Yeah. You're going to want me to pack the teddy bears up, right? I'm like, yeah. Those kind of things. So they start getting it by the end.
So for my property management, the listeners, so they're probably thinking, okay, this sounds awesome. I get it. I can see the value in it. Again, like relating it back to days on market. And at the end, I'm going to tie in as to why this is important if you're buying or selling your company. So, okay, they're listening and they're like, well, yeah, that's great, but I'm not a trained stager. Like, how am I supposed to do that? So I know I would love for you to talk a little bit about your program that you offer so that you can actually train people, because I know you work with people all over the US who can then learn these skills, learn how to have the conversations, and then go out and implement within their business and make their business better. So if you want to just do a highlight on what that looks like so that people, again, they can go to the show notes and download your guide, and then also maybe reach out to you as well and talk to you about learning more so that they can be the best in their community.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So I have had people use this system to go into a house, like you're saying, with the sellers or with the landlords, and using this as their, let's call it like a playbook to get them ready to prepare the house. So a lot of agents, they don't have an occupied home stager in their area who can come in and do this, but they can follow a framework. They can follow certain steps. And so what I've done is systemized the whole process so that they can go from working with the sellers, working on that mindset, getting that shift in place, getting on the same page, let's say, and then moving into how to get the rooms prepared and the house prepared, but then also elevated so that it really stands out, because that's the part that's going to attract more interested tenants. It's not just, well, clean it and take everything off your counters. That's like kind of basic. That's not really going to draw in those clients or tenants that you really want to attract. So you need to level it up. And so that's what this can do. It will help you get the sellers on board, move through the preparation program process, and then elevate each room so that it really, really stands out in photos and really feels good in showings. And so in the past, real estate agents, there's no playbook for this. There's no, like you're saying, I don't know what to do. I'm not a stager and I don't want to be a stager, right? And so there's no playbook for it. Nobody teaches you any of this stuff. It's not your fault. You just don't know it because it's not taught. But I did put together, like I was saying, like a listing prep playbook, so to speak. And it's a whole system, a framework that you go through. And then you'll walk into every room. You'll know exactly what to do to prepare the house and improve the presentation for the tenants. And so when you do that consistently, you'll start to be the agent that's known for that. You'll start to be the one that other sellers or other landlords choose. Oh, hey, this agent really got my house ready. They told me all these things to do and it made so much sense and I did it and we rented so fast. It really makes you stand out in the market and it's not really going to be that taxing on you.
Right.
So yeah, and so it can really help the agents know exactly what to do in the house, but then also helps the sellers not just take your pre-listing checklist that you might have and shove it in their junk drawer, right? You can hand them, hey, do these things you've printed off the internet, right? A little checklist before you sell. And they'll like, yeah, okay, I'll do a few of those maybe, and just shove it in the drawer and not think about it again. But I mean, and that's really frustrating. And that's not going to get the sellers on board. It's not going to get them buy-in into the process. And so if they don't have that buy-in, they're not going to do the stuff in their house and you can't make them, right? But by using this system, it really gets those sellers to follow through and do a lot, or if not most of the recommendations that you make. They'll take ownership in the whole process. And then the results show up. Like when you have the photos done, you'll see the difference. When people come to visit and walk through the house, they'll feel the difference as well. And so again, it just helps you stand out, just offering something else.
Right. Yeah. And really the main reason I wanted to have you on, I mean, I want to have you on for lots of reasons, but I really believe in educating other property managers of how to be better. Because obviously the better you are in your business, the more your business is going to be worth. So it does matter because you should be building your business as an asset. I've talked a lot about that, but how cool to have a whole nother tool. Like I never even thought of it. I mean, I had the random conversations like, hey, you should probably, you need to paint, you need to have professional paint.
Right.
But I remember, I mean, gosh, if I had your system that I've had the pleasure to learn because I've gotten to know you way back in the day, that would have been amazing to have those conversations. Right. Like, hey, let's get rid of this piece of furniture because now, I mean, it's making the living room look way too small and we can open it up, whatever. How cool would that be? So I really wanted to bring you on because I wanted the property management community to learn about you and your program because I think it works really well. And it just puts another tool in the tool belt of the business. And really, honestly, everybody that is building their business as an asset, and you're also looking at acquiring, but makes your company even more valuable as you're going out and talking to potential sellers, right? And now I'm talking about to the business owner. But on the buying side, it's really important too, like on the days on market right now, like I said, it's tough across the US. We're having tough conversations with landlords, but this would help elevate you in your market to be kind of the better one, hopefully decrease your days on market and get those homes rented. Because as you're looking at buying property management companies, that is something that we look at as pretty quickly in due diligence is what is your vacancy rate? And if your vacancy rate's really high, that's going to affect how much money you can sell your business for too. So it's kind of like this whole like spider web effect, but I thought it'd be cool to have you on so you could explain how another trick. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like how you call it a tool, because that really is what it is. Yeah, it's a whole framework, but all these pieces are in there, and they're just all so important to having that house have that pulled together look and feel.
Awesome. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you for your time and coming on. Any last words of advice you'd like to leave us with?
Well, don't be intimidated by preparing a house or elevating, or maybe call it staging, if you will. But really, it's just a lot of preparing and looking at it through maybe a different lens than a lived-in look would be. And so just looking at it as buyers would see it, and then communicating that to the owner and get it sold, right? Or get it rented.
Wow, decrease those days on market.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Let's just
great. Yeah, no,
get
awesome.
it
Well,
done.
yeah. So again, everybody, make sure you go to the show notes. Follow Amy on her social media. She's like very active on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. She puts out a weekly newsletter that's super helpful. And be sure and download her guide and yeah, get in her world. And I will tell you that it will give you a leg up in your market. It will make your company more valuable. And yeah, I thank you so much for coming today and sharing all your wisdom. And I appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And until next time, I will see you all again soon. All right, have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Stacey Salyer Show. Here's the deal. You can read about acquisitions anywhere, but you can't learn acquisitions from someone who's done it the way I have. As a buyer, a seller, and from the corporate side, evaluating hundreds of companies. That's why I need you to subscribe and share this with someone in your network who needs to hear it. And if this episode landed, leave a 5-star review. It's how more PM owners find the only acquisition expertise in the space that comes from all sides of the table. And while you're at it, grab my acquisition readiness checklist on my website at staceysalyer.com. Then, when you're ready to move from growth thinking to growth building, explore the Built to Acquire program. Don't leave it on the table. See you on the next episode.